I know many of you are wondering whether all Americans will be receiving a fourth stimulus check this month. So, here's the most important news on this. With prices increasing due to inflation and growing concern about the economy going into a possible recession, more than a dozen states are looking to send money to taxpayers in the form of tax refunds and relief checks as a way to ease the strain on their wallets. To help residents, some states are looking at statewide child tax credits and a gas tax holiday to bring gas prices down at the pump. This follows the federal government issuing 3 rounds of stimulus checks during the economic downturn caused by the crisis. Up to 23 million Californians can expect to receive a one-time inflation relief check starting this October, called a middle-class tax refund by Governor Gavin Newsom. Eligible families can look for up to $1,000, and New Mexico is sending out several waves of tax rebates and economic relief checks to those who qualify. The New Mexico first rebate went out in May and June, with more going out this month and August. Colorado Governor Jared Polis also announced that Colorado taxpayers will get more of their hard-earned money back, with $750 going back to individuals and $1,500 to joint fathers this summer. People in Colorado have until June 30th to file their taxes to receive the tax rebate this summer. These tax rebates are money already owed by people in Colorado and are getting back to them nearly a year quicker. Now that's thanks to a bipartisan law signed by the governor. The Colorado Cashback Tax Rebate is one of the steps that the Polis administration is taking to save people in Colorado money and put money back into the pockets of hardworking people. The Hawaii governor also signed a new bill into law. The bill puts more money directly into the accounts of Hawaii residents. The governor first proposed a tax refund in his 2022 State of the State address, given the strong revenue projections, and state legislature was able to increase the amount that will be returned to the taxpayers. The plan provides a tax refund of $300 for taxpayers who earn less than $100,000 a year, or couples earning less than $200,000. Taxpayers who earn more than $100,000 will receive $100. The Idaho State Tax Commission also started issuing 2022 rebates this year. The rebates automatically go to people who were full-year Idaho residents for 2020 and 2021. Now, this includes people who filed grocery credit refund returns, and the rebate amount is either $75 per taxpayer and each dependent, or 12% of their taxes for 2020. The Indiana governor also announced a plan that will return a total of $1 billion to Indiana residents. Each taxpayer will get about $225 in addition to $125 that they are already getting in automatic refunds. In a press release, Holcomb said the refund should benefit Indiana residents as they experience high inflation and gas prices. According to the release, the state's reported revenue for May was $209 over the forecast. For 11 months of the fiscal year, the state's revenues are $1 billion over forecast. If the governor's proposal is approved, the additional refund will be deposited into people's bank accounts. And those who get paper checks in August will get one check for the total refund amount.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I thank the gentleman for yielding. I thank him for his leadership as chair of the Veteran Affairs Committee, and thank the bipartisan support that the bill is receiving here. Madam Speaker, I rise today in strong support and the landmark honoring our PACT Act. As you know, PACT stands for Promise to Address Comprehensive Toxics Act, now named after Sergeant First Class Keith Robinson, and I'll talk about him in a moment. This bipartisan legislation honors our duty to deliver health care that millions of veterans need and that they have certainly earned. This is the second time the House has voted on this important bill, and we are proud that after the Senate passes this version, we will finally send it to the President to be signed into law. For their relentless leadership on this legislation, let me salute Chairman Mark Takano for his ranking member as well, who've made addressing toxic exposure a top priority in this Congress. Thank you, Mr. Takano. Congressman Raul Ruiz, whose experience as a physician and formed a key provision of this bill establishing presumption of exposure, and Congresswoman Elaine Loria, a Navy veteran who authored a provision expanding health benefits to veterans exposed to burn pits. Also included in this legislation, and I'm so pleased about it, is legislation by Congressman Matt Cartwright, author of the Camp Lejeune Justice Act, to allow veterans or their loved ones to seek damages related to injuries incurred while serving at Camp Lejeune. We had many people come from the area. The legislators from North Carolina have certainly, David Price and others, have been relentless in their pursuit of this legislation. Families would come here and tell their stories of their loved one's service at Camp Lejeune, where the water supply was causing health problems, serious health problems, not only for the service member, which would be horrible enough, but for their family members as well. This is corrected in this legislation. Very important improvement. From the deserts of Iraq to the mountains of Afghanistan, on the bases and military theaters around the world, a generation of courageous Americans have donned the stars and stripes to protect our freedom. Those heroes have put their lives on the line to fight the enemy. Yet, tragically, many have confronted another deadly threat, exposure to burn pits and toxics, which have taken a severe toll on their health. Make no mistake, burn pit exposures are pervasive. 86% of Iraq and Afghanistan veterans report being exposed to these toxic fumes. I don't even go into what's in these pits. It's so disgusting.
With the midterms coming up and a new inflation estimate scheduled to be released next week, the White House is now making deficit reduction a core part of its intense effort this month to convince voters of the economy, and that the economy is getting better. It marks a pivot, that is. Biden campaigned on wanting to be a transformative president. He pushed for massive spending packages throughout the 2021 year and played down concerns of inflation to boost these proposals. But now the president sounds more cautious about big government spending. The pivot started at his State of the Union speech earlier this year, and during his speech, Biden said, "My plan to fight inflation will lower your costs and lower the deficit. By the end of this year, the deficit will be down to less than half of what it was before I took office." Inflation has gotten steadily worse and stayed high since then. Biden rolled out a three-pronged approach, one being deficit reduction to wrangle inflation. He's also discussing the deficit in speeches and addressed the country about it again earlier this week. The federal deficit is the amount of money the federal government spends in a year's budget beyond what it has collected in revenue. The shortfall gets added to the country's total debt, and the United States has run up a budget deficit every year since the early 70s. It ran its largest deficit over the years of 2020 and 2021 because of the crisis. So as unemployment dropped, the nation's overall economic recovery sped up over last year. The deficit dropped in 2021. An even bigger drop projected is by the end of 2022 this year. Over the last few months, Biden is taking credit for this drop in the deficit in his State of the Union address. As gas prices remain record highs, New York has become the last state to suspend its gas tax in an effort to give drivers some relief at the pump. The suspension of the 16 cents per gallon tax runs from June 1st through the end of the year. The national average for a gallon of gas hit $4.62 for regular unleaded gas on May 31st. Diesel gas prices hit a record high on May 18th at $5.58